Yeah, my name's Chad Hickey, VP of Sales at XAD. At XAD, we connect the digital consumer to the physical world, and primarily we do that through our location verification, but also our first-party search intent data. So one of the interesting things that we're seeing within our network is that there is an aggressive surge in people who are geofencing their campaigns, but also using the geo-precise inventory for their audience targeting. And so when we look at our numbers, in Q1 of this year, we were at around 58% of campaigns, and today we're well over 90%. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is just beyond just your standard 5-mile fence, which we've seen executed in the past, we're starting to see some interesting strategic things be done and really uncover that from, 4 industry experts that have a lot of experience in that. So at this point, I'll let the panel introduce themselves, and I would like for them to answer, this question. It's a true or false. True or false, and tell me why. Accurate location is the foundation of all GeoFence and audience mobile campaigns. You want to start?
Yeah, so Jeff Ratner, I lead digital strategy across Zenith. We have a fantastic set of blue chip clients that range from packaged goods to financial services to automotive, telecom. And I would say, true or false? There's no gray area there. I think true. I think the reality is accuracy is important because the strategy that we've put in place assumes that the person we're talking to is where we assume them to be. And whether it's whatever our testing metrics are, it's assuming they're in that 5-mile range or closer if that's the type of buying we're doing.
Can you repeat the question again?
Oh, you need me to repeat it? Okay. True or false, accurate location is the foundation of all geofenced and audience mobile campaigns.
So hello everyone, my name is Phuc Truong. I lead the Mobext team, which is the brand name for the mobile specials under Havas Media. Like Jeff, we have blue chip clients across many different sectors, retail being one of them, which is very relevant for campaigns where you're looking to geofence. My answer is to your question is yes, it's very, very important.
Gabriel Cheng. I'm the Director of Strategy at M&C Saatchi Mobile. Basically, we're an agency that specializes in mobile strategy and media and really focused on helping clients harness the full value of mobile and being able to attribute performance back to the source of the banners and ads. So the question, I think it's true to a certain extent. Really depends on the objective of the campaign, but one thing's for sure is location does differentiate mobile from online, and it's really thinking about how to use location in a way to better understand your audience from a analytics standpoint. It's not just about targeting. I think it's to really understand your consumer, and if you think about why someone is at home versus on the go, and really target the person with the right time, with the right message, right place, it's really powerful. Yeah.
Hi, so my name is Derek Thompson, and I lead mobile for Starcom MediaVest Group in Chicago. I would say the answer to the question is definitely yes. I think we've all kind of said that. And for me, the accuracy is really important because it really drives the context that of which we want to speak to consumers and ultimately engage consumers. And without the accuracy of that information in terms of location, we're not best equipped then to serve the right type of engagement to that consumer. We can do so when in fact we know the location is right, we can speak to consumers in context, and when we do so, that's when we can drive the type of actions that we're looking for.
Okay. So to lead off with the question, Derek, let's start with you. Everyone answers true to that, and we sit here and we hear a lot of panels, and it's around data and audience targeting, things like that, but then when you look at the number of publishers that are passing accurate location, it's around 15%. So do you think that we're kind of moving ahead before we figure out the foundation, right? If you don't have that accurate location foundation in place, then is it really possible then to apply all that data?
So is it possible to apply that data if you're not getting accurate information? The answer would be no. I would argue that to the extent that we have run campaigns and over the course of the last couple of years that really try to take advantage of the value of location and understanding context, we have seen sizable results and differences when we do so effectively. So although we can tell ourselves, or we can say that the ecosystem is only offering 15 to 20% in terms of this type of location that's being passed along, I think we've seen some very significant results of when we are utilizing it. And we'll talk, I know, about measurement in just a little bit and the ways we've gone about that. So I think all of our clients see value in the fact of using location. It just comes down to how you're using that location information, whether it is to speak to consumers in real time and context, or using that to understand more about your audience that then allows you to build those audiences and message to them at later times, which in fact might be more contextually relevant and meaningful for them.
Yeah. And how do you measure, like, how do you, I guess, evaluate that, right? Like, how do you say, this is the partner that has that? You know what I mean? Everyone out there is claiming lat long, so how do you maneuver those conversations? Phuc, do you want to?
Sure. I think that, to your point, yeah, some publishers have location information, but even if they claim they do, you have to look under the hood a little bit further, because there are nuances and tricks of the trade. You know, we've heard certainly stories where a publisher were to pass along a lat long because obviously they could command a higher CPM on it. But when it comes down to it, the publisher or the network itself is passing along what they have is a zip code. They pass that along, but they mask that zip code and kind of assign a Latin long to that particular zip and then just pass along the Latin long. So there's that you have to be careful about. There's the fact that, you know, Dart, we all hate Dart as an ad server, but you know, Dart, especially mobile, Dart was not set up to ad serve a long string of information or numbers that's representative of a Latin long. So if you're working with partners that say, oh yeah, we work with Dart, then again, you need to look under the hood a little bit more. But I would think that one true way to kind of evaluate how good your partner is basically their traction in the marketplace and a lot of their claims, which at the end of the day you need to test, test, and if they improve, if they meet your goals, then you throw more or you partner more with that particular partner.
So once you have the accurate inventory, you know, in place, obviously that's when the fence can really work effectively for you. How are you handling at scale population density and setting the optimal fence, right? I mean, a fence in New York City is going to be very different from Wichita, Kansas, right? So can you talk a little bit about how you're maneuvering that, and is there challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolute challenges, you know. 2 miles from here is New Jersey. That's a totally different fence. You know, we've got clients that operate in New York and not New Jersey versus vice versa. So it is very difficult to put a fence around geographically. We start looking at population densities, gets back to the question, which are the partners in this space that have the best data for doing that? And certainly those that potentially have the overlay of registration data or can look deeper into their data sets to help shrink that fence where necessary, or obviously, you know, Kansas, where you've got less population density and can certainly cast a wider net. We also work with our clients. Our clients also know the range of customer draw that they have. So a Chase branch here in the city is a draw of about 3 blocks, which is why you see a Chase every 3 blocks or whatever, wherein out in Wichita, they know they can bring in folks from 10 miles or such. So working with the client to understand their base and the partners is how they can leverage their data, potentially data overlays, to narrow that focus down.
So Gabriel, you and I were talking about the fact that you have some brands that don't necessarily have physical locations. Can you talk a little bit about how you've executed some sort of geo-fencing strategy, and did you find it as effective, or just what was your experience there?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can think about geofencing. For not just, it's not just relevant to clients with brick and mortar locations. We work with a lot of brands that are mobile only or mobile or online, have only online properties without any physical locations. And it's really taking the data and understanding the consumer. For example, like, based on the time of day and they're at home, and understanding kind of what sort of profile, the mindset of the consumer when they're at home, and then applying that from a targeting and messaging standpoint. And on the other side is when they're out and about, and you can, understand where they go to shop and things like that. And if it's, for example, if it's like an online retailer, you can really understand the type of user that is most likely to be a customer that's interested in your products based on, where they spend most of their time. And so so when I think about GeoFence, it's not just kind of like the bottom of the funnel when someone's near a store about to transact, but it's to set up geofences and understand the context of all the different geofences based on where it is and, and applying time of day and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So let's move a little bit more toward the beyond of just setting a fence around your actual, brand's brick and mortar location and talk about competitive conquesting, because that's something that lately has been, in a lot of the industry trades. So Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about the fencing of the competition? It's obviously gaining popularity. Have you executed a strategy like this, and what have you found?
Yeah, I think, there's ways to think about and execute these things, that it's not just about applying and pushing out that message when they were within that fence, but is understanding behavioral patterns and understanding that someone is in and out of a location frequently. You can start assuming things about them, and that could give you an opportunity to talk to them, maybe not at that moment where competition might be trying to talk to them, but when they've moved out of that zone. So, there's a lot of competition to talk to someone when they're in airport or something like that. Obviously, credit cards, airlines, everybody's interested in that business traveler. But if we know someone's in and out of airports, there might be opportunities to talk to them out of that place and have an opportunity not to be in a cluttered environment where someone has an opportunity to make a more thoughtful decision. Similarly with retail, if someone's already in a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever, it's too late. So, but if you know that they frequent that type of area, you can use that as an opportunity to conquest or to get a message in when you know that behavior.
Yeah, you talk a lot about talking and, to the consumer themselves, right? So with the messaging, can you give a little bit more detail around, is it an offer? Like what do you do to see the best results?
I think that's a challenge for the whole space is actually when you know these things about the person, what is the message? Again, we come from this notion of broadcasters talking to large groups of people and buy now or things like that when we actually get down to this retail. But it is trying to figure out, now that you know my behavior, you know where I am, quite frankly, a lot of conversation with our creative partners is what to say to these people. One, so you don't creep them out, but two, that you can get that right message in. I think it adds a whole different layer to the conversations. I think in digital, we're either a brand message or an acquisition message. Now I think we're somewhere in that middle space, especially when you're not in retail, to get them to put the right kind of message in front of them. I think we've got a lot of work to do here.
Got it. Do a lot of people think about their competition wrong when it comes to mobile? I think that, recently we did some research on the retail category, right? And we see a lot of retailers say, well, this other brick and mortar retail location is my competition. But through that research, we actually saw that there was a heavy usage, and it's probably no surprise, on Amazon. So when people are competitively conquesting, on mobile, are they thinking about their competition, right? Should they really be looking at the behaviors of the Amazon user? Gabriel, you want to take that?
Yeah, one of the things about, everyone's talking about like showrooming and things like that, I think rather than being so afraid of this issue and what they call an issue, it's actually see it more as an opportunity to improve the in-store experience. They're at the store for a reason. You shouldn't be afraid that they're not going to end up purchasing because of Amazon, or they can kind of check prices and buy it online. I think if you focus more on improving the in-store experience, and the perfect example, I would say, Best Buy could be one where, helping the user decide on which products to buy, some shopping guide, kind of a more utilitarian, and also adding in the loyalty aspect to it. And I think that's a big opportunity for brick and mortar to really, take the opportunity rather than be afraid of this, of Amazon or whatever online competitors there are. Yeah.
And just on the topic of showrooming, I mean, I think from a showrooming perspective, you tend to see the scenario of the person actually in the store and they're doing all these different things and having this miraculous message pushed to them, right? But I mean, is showrooming really just that? Or do you feel like showrooming happens even before you get to the store, right? We're starting to see a lot around pre-visits and actually hitting people where they may be at a brand that they have an affinity to before. So any experience there, Phuc or Derek, that you want to talk about?
I can take that on. So basically what Jeff referred to, you know, when he answered his question was context. And as, you know, as marketers, we're always looking at the ability to hit the right person at the right time. Now, obviously where they are, we could hit them with a message, but we really have to think about what's the context of that user at the time. Because oftentimes, you know, you could serve a message, but is that person of the right mindset? And the only ways that we could do that is to really, you know, hone in on the technology, not only from a ad serving perspective based on proximity to a point of interest, but what's the historical patterns of that user. So, you know, an example of showing a quick service restaurant message at 11:30, unless it's a great offer, they will have made their decisions already, right? So I think that geofencing is just one tactic, but you really have to think about, you know, how long the sales cycle is for that individual, and when to hit them up accordingly. And there's many factors relating to that, not only location, but again, you know, what's the journey, and have I delivered the right message within various parts of the funnel?
Yeah.
I think if I could jump in on that, what worries me about conquesting when you talk to clients is real excited about the idea. This is 1 or 2 years ago, and great, they've had some success with it. So now when it comes to mobile, oh yeah, we use mobile to conquest. That's what we use it for. Finally figured it out. It's great. And I think there's a real danger there, because when clients start thinking of like, okay, I just use mobile for that particular tactic, they're really losing sight of what mobile can truly deliver. And we talked today about how it is the connective thread, allows us to understand audiences better, connects us back to the home experience. That's one of my concerns, and we continue to work with clients to kind of help broaden that definition of how to use mobile. The second thing is, when you start talking about conquesting, well, if you're conquesting, then okay, then that means you have to drive a sale. So let's now take it back, and it's only a success if, in fact, I'm able to look at it and be able to demonstrate lift. That, too, is very much, I think, short-sighted, because if we are, in fact, working with brands and we're working with merchants and we are helping them deliver the right message, the contextual message, to consumers at the right place and right time, because I'm serving them a toy message because the consumer just pulled into a Toys R Us parking lot. Pretty smart, right? If I can take advantage of that, but to take it back down to, okay, well, it's not a success because it didn't drive that sale, I think, again, is the wrong way to look at it. And I think as marketers and as merchants, they also need to take responsibility for the fact that if we are, in fact, using our media to drive store traffic, QSRs and retail and all these types of things, merchants and brands have their job to do as well. And there's many factors, as we all know, that ultimately buys or leads us to a purchase decision.
So from a fencing perspective, I think it's pretty safe to say to set a circle, you know, 5 miles around a location or a competitor's location and think that everyone within that fence is your customer. That's probably not the best way to look at this, right? So you see a lot of people now layering on data to those fences to create more of an efficient buy. Can you talk a little bit about the experience you've had with that? Is it more successful? Have you seen some good lift in performance, and what is that performance?
Yeah, I mean, we've tested that, and so we've got some very data-rich clients, and to the point where you know, you're looking for, we'll call it a top-of-wallet experience or something like that. We have an opportunity to get somebody who is walking into a retail environment and to push a reminder out there. And what we've seen is in certain tests that we've done within promotional windows, we can raise a couple of points that top of mind. So that there is this opportunity to be that last message that somebody sees. You know, but there's also some behavioral challenges. The behavioral challenge is that we're not necessarily walking around the world with our phone. Well, in this city we are, but in general, walking around with our phones out in front of us. And how are you going to push that message? And so there's a lot of challenges in terms of timing of these messages, when you get in front of somebody. You know, some of the things that we're looking at, I know we'll talk about the future a little later, but is where Bluetooth LE starts coming in and some of the kind of push technologies that have rolled out in iOS 7 and things like that, that give us an opportunity to be a last message opportunity when someone gets into a retail environment.
And
I was just going to say that I think where you're going is that the risk of doing that, right, the risk of actually taking your audience and kind of further defining it, if you will, is that you're obviously sacrificing scale, right, ultimately to deliver a very pinpoint type of audience. So I think it comes back down to brand, and it comes back down to what they want to do. For QSR, that would make 0 sense, right? If you want to go out there and target a specific luxury customer for a BMW or Rolex or something along the lines, then maybe that makes more sense. But it's certainly on a case-by-case type of basis, and you got to understand those trade-offs.
yeah, I think it depends on the granularity of the fence, obviously, and then, you know, what kind of data you're actually using. And so that kind of leads to a follow-up question for the group. You know, you see a lot of data, let's say, you know, an automotive brand, for example, Phuc, big, popular data set, but primarily, you know, focused on where people live as far as the data and how it's compiled. So does that translate to someone on their smartphone? Does data based on where people live actually translate as people move throughout their day? Is that relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is geo is always going to potentially be an indicator of economic status in general, right? Again, cities like Manhattan, 1 block north or south from wherever could change your economic status. But in general, geo is an indicator of economic status. Well, obviously provides that. So again, it gets to those behavioral characteristics where if you know someone's always in the same circle, you can use that as a layer of data to help pinpoint economics. But again, it also gets back to some of those broader behavioral patterns that you can start seeing. Again, the frequent airport visitor, the frequent, you know, I don't know, elementary school visitor or something like that. If you can start getting some granularity in your fences, but you know, to points made, obviously it has to represent a decent amount of scale or something that's repeatable across multiple markets. You get some good information there.
Or you have to be hitting a residential area.
Right.
You know what I mean? A 1 mile fence that may not hit residential, then is that data really relevant at that point? So.
Yeah.
And location is one data point, right? I
Right.
mean, it's not the silver bullet. I mean, granted, in Conquest, you're going to rely on that rather heavily because you have a very specific objective, and it's probably for a very specific time. But location in general is just one more piece of the puzzle. One more piece of the puzzle to understand audiences, to allow you to deliver in context. And I would never say that it's the one-stop shop, if you will, in terms of really trying to make a meaningful engagement.
I mean,
Yeah,
just
I mean,
to add
just
to
to-
that,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, to me, before even considering, you know, paying a premium for third-party data, like, there's data that you can use that's free that is probably going to be much more effective, first of all, and you know, allows for the maximum scale in the GeoFence. Stuff like simple as like device, just understanding your customer, based on the type of device they own, what sort of household income, how valuable is an iPhone user more valuable than Android, for example, or even when you start talking about at home, you know, the same user using an iPhone versus their iPad. It could be much more valuable because their mindset, the reason why they're using the iPad is for a totally different reason than why they use the iPhone at home. So it's really understanding, you know, the device time and all that kind of stuff. And I think by targeting that way, it's probably more effective and higher return than layering on these third-party data sets. Yeah.
Unless you could successfully negotiate it with your publishing partner or your network.
I think no single data points looked at alone. They hopefully will all add together to paint a picture and validate each other.
So let's talk a little bit about audience. How are you currently defining the audience that you reach? I mean, is it based off this third-party data? Is it based off of locations that they tend to frequent? What are you seeing as far as your audience definition?
Well, for us, I mean, it could take form in a few ways. Certainly, we have first-party data. based off of the information that the clients give to us. We have some more first-party data due to the data warehouse that we have that we collectively collect information over time based on previous campaigns, and we segment that data accordingly based on demo, HS, household income, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, for us at least, we're coming in with the expectation of who we're going to target, what first-party data sources do we have regarding this particular segment, and then, you know, we'll work with the various potential media partners to bring on a third-party element if they have access to it. So,
Any other answers from the group?
I think audiences vary by campaign, and some of them are, you know, as simple as someone walking in my door to, you know, we're for an insurance client, we're trying to talk to the folks that are flooded out in Colorado right now. We want to put a message in front of them, and it's an obvious way to get in there and do a fairly broad geo-fence across the state and get some messaging to those people who are wandering around looking for their insurance agents. So, again, different targeting strategies for different use cases.
Have there been any instances where you've run a mobile campaign and you've figured out that the audience you thought you had wasn't really the mobile audience? And to give a little bit more clarity around that, I mean, we recently ran a campaign that was a health-conscious QSR where, you know, the assumption was we have to geofence gyms and all these different things. And when what we really found out is that the brand affinity was really around fast food. It was people going and eating really bad and then going, oh, I'll go be, you know, healthy at this place. You know what I mean? To kind of offset that. So have there been any instances that you've experienced with that happening?
Oh, go ahead. I mean, I think in most cases, yeah, it's very different, especially if it's a brand that hasn't done much mobile campaigns before. I think you go into the campaign, they have a certain expectation, like, you know, the online demographic is going to be the same as mobile. The demographic may be the same, but like some of the insights that you get from mobile, where you can only get from mobile, that is a much richer profile of the audience, is something that I think that people or clients are most surprised about. You know, like back to my earlier point, again, like just understanding the devices, what's that most valuable device for, you know, for in terms of like LTV, like understanding like tablet is more valuable than iPhone, like things like that are super important. And then you start, it starts bleeding into from media to the landing experience and really catering that landing experience to those insights based on their behavior and how they use the tablet and what's important to them. I think, you know, Guilt is probably a good example of this. Guilt, you know, has, you know, created an app that on the phone that is very, very different than the app that's on the tablet. And it's all based on how the user is, you know, maybe more of a lean back approach, you know, window shopping at home as more as entertainment versus on the phone, they probably, it's more for the sale. They want to immediately get the item that before it runs out. So it's a very different user experience in that case. Yeah.
So Chad, we got about 4 minutes left.
I was like, who's talking to me?
We got about 4 minutes
Jesus?
left. Actually, we got about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
So what I'd like to have is open up to the audience real quick to see if there's a couple of burning questions, and then we will carry on.
You want to open it up? Sure.
Yeah. Any burning questions to the panel?
Everything was just so clear.
All right, going once, going twice. Any closing statements then?
Yeah, I would just ask one last question. So if you had to complete this sentence, what would it be? The next advancement in geofencing campaigns is?
I think I teased it. I think where Bluetooth LE starts coming in and looking at, you know, very narrow casting. And I think the interesting thing about that is it probably will give us some ground up learning that we can then spread out to broader geofencing. So what do you tell someone in store? What do you tell them in the parking lot? And then start taking those learnings to say in the neighborhood, in the vicinity. And so I think that's going to be something interesting.
I think the commerce piece is a big area. Not only, you know, narrow casting, but there's also kind of merging the purchase data with a lot of these car-linked offer companies. What they could do, iBeacon, which is the Apple technology that, you know, hits people up near stores. Ambient noise, which is what Shopkick is doing. So there's many ways in which you could deliver the message based on the proximity of a point of interest. And then there's other technologies that you could layer on top to kind of stitch that closed loop perspective. So.
I mean, I think if you're talking about brick and mortar geofence, I think the kind of you'll start seeing a bit more of a synergy between driving the store and in-store experience. I think right now it's kind of strategized in two separate people within the organization. I think there needs to be a greater synergy because you spend tons of money to get them to the store, and then there's a disconnect between closing that gap once they're in the store. So it's going to really, I think, making sure the strategy is synced up. Yeah.
I would say it comes down to impact. I mean, really, it comes down to how are you demonstrating results and the efficiency of what you're doing and being able to take it back down to the level of engagement or the return on that investment. That's it.